virtual provincial event is on the unceded territory of the Assembly of First Nations of Quebec. I am speaking to you from Gatineau, which is the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe, the Algonquins of West Quebec, whom Samuel de Champlain met in 1603. I'm pleased to announce out of the Prime Minister's office that Greg Fergus, the MP for Hull-Elmer, who spoke so eloquently at our first conference last week, has been sworn into the Privy Council of Canada, been named the Parliamentary Assistant to the Prime Minister and the Parliamentary Assistant to the President of the Treasury Board. So when the next time you meet Greg, please address him as the Honourable Greg Fergus. Isn't that wonderful news?
Yes.
Especially during Black History Month. Now, everyone should remember that Greg Fergus is the founder and the chair of the Caucus of Black Parliamentarians of the House of Commons and the Senate. And he's my MP right here in Elmer and the Gatineau, and we're so proud of him. Rosemary?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rose Murphy, and I'm the president of the Quebec Federation of Home and School Associations. On behalf of our federation, Learn's Community Learning Center Initiative, and the Committee for the Enhancement of the Curriculum of the History of Quebec, I welcome you to the celebration of Black history. I would also like to acknowledge that this event is taking place with the funding from the Community Support, Multiculturalism, and Anti-Racism Initiative of the Patrimoine Canadien Heritage. And I'd like to introduce Linton Garner, our past president of the Federation. Linton?
Merci, Madame Présidente. Bonjour tout le monde et je vous souhaite bienvenue à notre session sur l'histoire des Noirs du Canada. Au nom de la Fédération québécoise des foyers d'école, je souhaite bienvenue et j'aimerais mentionner en même temps que nous sommes ici grâce à des fonds mis en place par le ministère ou la ministre du multiculturalisme et Patrimoine Canada. Et on espère que tu vas aimer ce soir notre présentation par Madame Dorothy Williams ou Dr. Dorothy Williams et l'ancienne et l'honorable Marlene Jennings. Merci beaucoup et on continue. Rosemary?
Thank you. Thank you, Garner. Thank you, Mr. Garner. Sorry. Before we start, I really would like to congratulate Dr. Williams. She was selected as the recipient of the 2022 John Denningson Award by Black Ottawa Scene. This annual award is presented for exemplifying excellence in the promotion of Canadian Black history and cultures. Congratulations, Dr. Williams.
Thank you.
And also, I understand you were also named as the CBC's Quebec Black Changemakers, which is great. Congratulations on both fronts.
Thank you.
And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce our special guest. She was also recently highlighted by CBC as Quebec one of Black Changemakers of 2022. She is the first Black woman elected to Parliament representing NDG and Lachine. And she's also president of the QCGN, the Quebec Community Groups Network. Ladies and gentlemen, Marlene Jennings.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. And first, I'd like to thank Brian for having roped me into this. And I also want to add my words of congratulations to Dr. Dorothy Williams, a good friend and definitely a historian who merits every single award. She should be getting more awards for the work that she has done on bringing Black Canadian contribution to Canadian society. I'm serious. Dorothy, you know me. I don't throw words around lightly. And I have a great deal of admiration and affection for you. And a big part of that, beyond the fact that you're a nice person, is the fact that you've done such stellar work on this. So thank you. I'm going to start with a quote. The members and officials of the Negro Citizenship Association and the Toronto CPR division of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters will continue to fight unremittingly for the right of all people of this planet to enter Canada and become its citizens without penalty or reward because of their race, color, religious beliefs, national origin, or ancestry. Yes, we take the uncompromising position that what appears to be premeditated discrimination in Canada's immigration laws and policy is utterly inconsistent with democratic principles. I believe that every single Canadian and anyone who wants to become a citizen of this country should know that quote. That quote is from Stanley G Grizzle. He was the president of the CPR, Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, Toronto Division, and he made that statement on April 27, 1954 in Ottawa. You see a delegation of Black sleeping car porters. They were all Black. There were no white sleeping car porters. Retired porters and their allies, mainly members of the Jewish communities here in Eastern Canada, chartered sleeping cars to travel to Ottawa, the seat of Canadian Parliament, and they protested and advocated for a Canada based on inclusiveness and diversity. The delegation met with several federal ministers and called for immediate changes to our immigration and our labor laws. Change didn't come immediately, but those Black porters never ceased their advocacy for these fundamental rights. And finally, some change did come. In 1976 and 1977, the Canadian government adopted a new Immigration and Citizen Act that removed virtually all the discriminatory sections that had both either prohibited or limited Black British subjects and all people of African ancestry from immigrating to Canada. A Fair Employment Practices Act was also adopted, which leveled somewhat the playing field in federal sectors of activities, not just for Blacks, but for all Canadians. And that's why I'm telling you about this piece of Canadian history. I believe that Black History Month is important, and that's why I'm so pleased that the Quebec Federation of Home and School Associations has organized this conference and the earlier one, which took place on February the 1st, because I have the belief that the highly significant parts of Canada's histories and Canada's move to modernity and to values of inclusiveness, of diversity, and of equality is in large part due to the struggles, the advocacy, the protests, the fights that Blacks in Canada have waged for centuries now, but at least definitely in the last 100 years, for our rights, yes, but for the rights of all Canadians. As Stanley Grizzle said, regardless of race, ethnic origin, religion, gender, you name it, everyone should enjoy the same rights. Canada's move to values of inclusiveness, of diversity, and of equality is based in large part due to those struggles. Most Canadians know nothing or virtually nothing about the wide sweeping contributions of Black Canadians to the foundation of modern Canada. Our peoples played key roles in the promotion, advocacy, and fight for equality, an equality that has benefited and continues to benefit Canadians of all origins. There is a saying that when Black people make gains, all people benefit, and all make those same gains. The situation in Canada during this pandemic has heightened the social divisions and inequities of our society. Those social divisions and equities always existed. They exist today, but the pandemic has brought it into the public light much more than it has in the past. We have experienced a rise in hate crimes. Many who have disproportionately been negatively affected by COVID-19 are our most vulnerable communities. And that includes those of the Black communities, people of color, for instance. And yet we see, and now I'm getting a little political, you might say, but I don't believe so. I think I'm coming back to the very values that Canada is supposed to stand for, and that we Blacks have fought for, and many others have fought for. And yet we see a convoy of big hauler trucks blocking downtown Ottawa, the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor, and other border crossings across Canada, bringing havoc to local communities and putting our supply chain in jeopardy. And with these same manifestations, we're witnessing too many of those so-called participants in that so-called freedom convoy using Nazi flags and symbols, making hate speech against Blacks, people of color, immigrants, homosexuals, bisexuals, transgendered. So far, not enough ordinary Canadians have denounced such hatred as having no place in Canada. And not enough Canadians have clearly disassociated themselves from such hatred. Everybody's fed up with the pandemic. But not everyone's a Nazi. There's a German saying, if you're seated at a table with 10 Nazis, there are 11 Nazis seated at that table. Well, if people here in Canada are not raising their voices to denounce what is happening with those so-called freedom convoys and the hate speech and the hatred that some of those protesters are making, and the others in that convoy are not shutting it down, and the leaders are not shutting it down. Some of them are the ones who are propagating that hate speech. Then that means that you're tacitly agreeing with it. That's why I believe Black History Month in Canada is important. It's crucial until the majority of Canadians who are not BIPOC people, who are not Black, Indigenous, people of color, recognize that their rights and the benefits that they take for granted were achieved largely through the struggles and the advocacy of Black Canadians over many decades. And this is where education comes to play. And this is why Dr. Dorothy Williams' ABCs kit is so important, because we need to get it into our schools so that it becomes part of the history that our children are taught. History is a mandatory course, as far as I know, in every single school across Canada. And until our children are raised with a full knowledge of the rich contribution that Black Canadians and non-Canadians living in Canada have made, and the benefits and the rights that these children enjoy are there in large part because of our advocacy, our struggles, our fights for those rights, not just for us, but for everyone. Black History Month is one piece of the puzzle, but it's a significant piece. It's a crucial piece. And as I said, I have a great deal of admiration and respect and affection for Dr. Dorothy Williams. And I think that she doesn't get sufficient accolades from across Canada. So I'm delighted that she just received that award from an organization based in Ottawa, because it means that her reach is broadening. And I'm going to conclude with a saying I heard recently. When you are accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. Think about it. Think about it. Thank you very much. I won't be able to stay for the breakouts and then the Q&A, because as I explained before everybody was admitted, I think I have a mild case of food poisoning, so I'm suffering from a lot of gas and nausea. But I wish you all the best. You're in good hands with Dorothy and with Linton, and of course with Rosemary and Carol and Brian. So I'm going to say goodbye now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marlene, and feel better, please. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Night, night.
Okay. Just to name, last time when we did this in Montreal, or well, Zoom, but it was supposed to be in Montreal, we had with us our MNA David Birnbaum, who represents Darcy McGee, and he is a great supporter of the ABCs of Black history. He's actually put his money where his mouth was, so he really did support the foundation or the production of this. We also had, and I saw her name, but I see that she's left now, was Sophie Chantal, who is the MP from Pontiac. She's also been a big supporter for us. And we have, I should say, Charles Taker, who is our Quebec representative for the Office de la Langue Officielle. And he comes, he's amazing. He joins us in every one of our activities, and he's so great. Thanks, Charles. I appreciate you being out there. We also have a number of people from some of our sister groups. We have QCGN, Sylvie Martin Laforge is here. We also have Con. I think a couple of people from Con are here tonight. And again, we'd like to thank Kevin Licorice, who is our help tonight from Learn Quebec, which has always been there to help us out whenever we ask for them. So without further ado, I think we shall. Yeah, go ahead, Brian. Go ahead.
If I may, this session was originally supposed to be out of the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Elementary School Community Learning Center in Hull-Gatineau. And we're pleased tonight to have with us Michael McCrank, representing the Council of Commissioners for the Western Quebec School Board, and Letitia Taylor, the Parent Commissioner, who is on the Council of Commissioners of the Western Quebec School Board, and also involved with the not-for-profit group Parents for Diversity in the region. So we welcome them being with us here tonight.
Thank you, Brian. I'm glad you brought, mentioned them, because I don't know them personally, so that's great. Also,
if I may,
go ahead, Linton. Go ahead, Linton.
I did want to recognize a few old friends in the crowd as well. I
I
won't
guess
say.
that's Maria. You're gonna name Maria, right?
Yes, well, Maria Peluso, former professor at Concordia University, who has actually taught me a lot, throughout these days of public representation and how to conduct oneself, in the public in that light. Also, Charlene Sullivan from Neighbors, which is way out in Abitibi, in the Abitibi, who I think, unfortunately for her, I recruited her many years ago to start working in the public sector, working with Alliance Quebec, the youth chapter, back in the days, and now she's used that leadership training to lead Neighbors, the organization, which is also a member of the, an affiliate of many of our community organizations, and the and now the regional development network that's been established, as well as Matthew Farhan from Quan. Thank you very much for being here and for supporting the work of Dr. Dorothy Williams. She has often mentioned how lucky she is to have Quan, and Matthew on her side.
Linton, we are so lucky to have Dorothy on our board. She's been on our board for about 10 years, and it would be no fun without her. She's such a she's such a great person, and it's so knowledgeable. She's great. So I echo what you just said.
She's a living history book. What can I tell you?
There she is.
Yeah, I'd also like to acknowledge Jennifer Carbonell, who is the president of the Home and School Association at Pierre Elliott Trudeau Elementary School Community Learning Center, who has served valuably as a liaison with the Community Learning Center in originally organizing the in-person session at Pete's, but has sort of helped us with the transition to the virtual versions. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you and welcome everyone again. Also, just wanted to mention that we have one of our students from St. Charles, which is also one of our associations, was also named a Black change maker. Very young. I think she's only like 11 years old, 10, 11 years old, and she was named that because she started she became a little entrepreneur. She started a little business last year when they were all at home learning online. So, so congratulations to that young lady. And without further ado, I guess Kevin, I will allow you to break us up into our sessions. And I think everyone with Linton is staying here and everyone with Dorothy is going into another room.
Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and do the breakout room now.
Okay, thank you. See you later, Dorothy.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so here are the breakout rooms. Okay. Ooh, Dorothy should be in the other room, no? Or
Yes.
okay. Okay, so Linton, whenever you wish to start, my love.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for being with me. I'm sorry that you all had to be with me just the second show here, and missing Dorothy, but hopefully you got her before. Yes, so welcome to this explanation of the ABCs of Canadian Black history. I am the co-creator along with Dr. Boyce Williams. She is certainly the historian, and as I've mentioned many times, I'm just along for the ride, and I just sort of bask in her glow. My participation has been through the fact that Dorothy and I have been friends, certainly for many years, and we certainly in many separate kind of community activities, met each other in various different ways, but it wasn't until I discovered that she had a wealth of information about Black history and Canadian Black history in particular, that we started to communicate. I have a special interest, in that and in Black history, and I have long been a participant in the Black community, working in a variety of community organizations. I'm a past president of the Dagenais Black Community Association, past president of the famous Negro Community Center, and I am a co-founder of a group that I see just a member is just joining us now, a past president herself, is Tamba Mitchell from the West Island Black Community Association. Hi, Tamba. Nice to see you. And through all of that, through all of my activity in terms of working with the Black community, I developed a general and a genuine interest because I grew up without any Black history. In my schooling, I was lucky enough to have a few family references that told me that we existed and that we had been here, a long time. I actually have a relative who, from my mother's side, who is commemorated on a statue in Washington, D.C. As a participant in the American Civil War with the Black troops, and I was lucky enough to be able to find that information, but way too late in terms of my own personal development. However, with Dr. Williams, we've been able to, really establish within our milieu, within our community, a real focus and a center around, Black history. I was one of the people as well when working with the Montreal urban community and as a participant in the City of Montreal's Committee on Intercultural and Interracial Relations to insist that we create a Black History Month here, in Montreal. And what you see now is produced annually a calendar. I think it's close to its 30th year now, I believe, noting the contributions of Blacks across the country. In Montreal and in Quebec. So my interest has been both just in terms from an intellectual pursuit, but as well, really from personal interest, because I also wanted to be able to make sure that my children grew up with an understanding of where they come from. So people like to say, why is there a Black History Month? Well, there's a Black History Month because nobody has talked about us before as a part of history. History is really important to our society. We use it as a way of telling our story. We use it as a way of creating the foundation for what we for who we are. It really forms our approach, our cultures, our understandings about our places in the world. And we recognize that there are people who have made some outstanding contributions to our history, all right, to the development of our country, and we value that. When you are missing from the narrative, the narrative for Black history, for Canadian history, it is a statement that says that you didn't accomplish anything, you didn't contribute, and you have no value. And in fact, when Dr. Williams was in high school, she asked her, her professor, her teacher, why aren't you teaching anything about Blacks in the history of Canada? And he said, point blank, because you have no history. Imagine as a young person hearing that in the midst of your years in high school, all right, when you're just figuring out who you are and where you want to go and what you want to do, and actually haven't even figured that out yet. But here is another blow to, to your psyche that you have to suffer that kind of indignity because people don't feel that you have any value. And it was played out in her history lessons that there was nothing about who we were and what we contributed. So our collaboration has been determined, is determined upon the, I guess, upon the idea that we want to make everybody know, and all Canadians know, right, just what were the contributions of Canadian Black. In Black History Month in the past, we've often talked about international and American heroes, like we were talking about a Nelson Mandela or Oprah Winfrey or a Michael Jordan, somebody like that. That's not real history in the sense of, who we are, and certainly it's not just Canadian. We need to be able to understand that Canadians contributed to the development of this country, and they need to be recognized and celebrated and valued for their contributions. So, and as a matter of fact, we have subtitled our kit into a phrase that I always like. It is really a journey of discovery into Canadian history, because that's what it is. It's Canadian history. It's not Black history. It really is Canadian history. And it's Canadian history where the Black community, or members of the Black community, had significant roles to play in what we know and understand as Canada today. What we know and understand as having produced our values, all right, and the kinds of foundations, the kind of foundation that we stand upon today. So whether we're talking about somebody like a man by the name of Mr. Mifflin Gibbs, who was invited by the then governor of the British Columbia Territories, Mr. James Douglas, who, by the way, was also a Black man. And I've conferred this with, who was originally from Louisiana, but he was appointed by the Queen to be a governor of British Columbia. But he recognized and understood that Black business persons in the United States were not getting a fair shake. Were having difficulty realizing their business dreams. He also understood that in the British Columbia territory, it needed to be populated. He needed to generate commerce and industry. And so he invited a number of Black business persons to come to British Columbia and establish themselves. And Mr. Mifflin Gibbs was amongst them. And Mr. Mifflin Gibbs was quite an accomplished individual because he established a mine in British Columbia, a railroad in British Columbia. He also established one of the first retail stores in Canada. As a matter of fact, his retail store model was the model that was used by the Eaton's family for all of their stores, right? But he didn't stop there. At a conference called the Yale Conference, where there was going to be a serious discussion by political leaders and everything. By the way, he'd been elected as a municipal councillor in his community as well. He was not invited to speak, he wasn't supposed to, but he took the floor just before the vote. Before the vote was whether to keep the British Columbia territories in Canada, or what was the fledgling part of Canada, because it wasn't established, it was just Upper and Lower Canada for real at the time. He gave an impassioned speech that convinced that conference and then subsequent conferences in the West, in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba, to give the idea of a Canadian nation, a chance, and not join the United States. And without his contribution, right, and you may almost call him a father of confederation, what you know as Canada today might have stopped at the border between Ontario and Manitoba, right, and the rest of it being, right, the United States. So, the fact that he's not recognized for that contribution, well, I guess he would say, well, no big deal, as long as in the end, we did not join the United States. But we think that he really is, a father of confederation. Now, we've been here even long before Mr. Gibbs. We start our presentation or our ABCs in terms of the timeline back to 1628, when the very first slave was brought to the Port Royal, which, as we know now, is Quebec City. A young man was sold to the Couillard family around 10 years old. He came from Madagascar. He was sold to the Couillards by, I think, the Kirk brothers, who were, privateers from France. And the local priest baptized him as Olivier Lejeune. And in fact, the priest's name was Lejeune. He became his teacher, and de facto, Olivier became the first Black student in Quebec, and actually in almost Canadian history, the first Black student. And the legacy has continued from there. Of course, lots of people know that that Samuel de Champlain, when he came here and declared the land that he found here as Nouvelle-France, lots of people know that his guide, his pilot, his interpreter was a man by the name of Matthew Decosta, a Black man of Portuguese origin. However, if he knew the language and he could guide Samuel de Champlain, it kind of indicates that he might have even been here before that, because he spoke Mi'kmaq, which is the language of the indigenous nations that are down east, who they first encountered. And he was the one that guided him to Port Royal and to establish Port Royal, which is now Quebec City. And of course, he was one of the founding members of what they call the Order of Good Cheer, which I understand still exists today. Yet we do not know that a Black man was a part of its origins. And so these are the kinds of stories that we like to be able to indicate, to tell people about their history. And it goes right through our development, whether we're talking about the War of 1812, all right, with a famous battle, the Queenston battle, which was led by Captain Dick, they call him, Richard Pierpoint, and who at the age of 58 volunteered to become a part of the army to repel the Americans, because he had experienced slavery, he had experienced racial discrimination, and he didn't want this country, the new land that he'd been making his home in, all right, to be under that same kind of influence. And he felt it was extremely important that that Canada become a nation of its own and declare itself distinct from the United States. So we have many references like that, where Blacks fought in many ways, all right, to try to make sure that we as a nation were certainly different than the United States. We have all kinds of examples of, certainly in military battles, whether we're talking about somebody like William Hall, who was one of the first of 3 Canadians to win the Victoria Cross, which is, if you know anything about the military, that is the highest honor that the British Empire can bestow upon a soldier. And he made his accomplishments during the Crimean War, and not on one occasion, but on 2 occasions. He defended a fort and repelled an invading force that preserved victory for the British side. And of course, at the time, we were all all Canadian troops were a part of the British Commonwealth troops. So but these are the kinds of things that everybody should know. Everybody should understand that we've been here, we've made our contribution. And young people should be able to see, and particularly Black people, should be able to see that we do have a place, and we've been here, and that what we have done has been significant and important to the development of this country. We always understand, in the Black community, we have a saying, if I can see it, I can be it. All right. And the fact is, we have not been able to see it for too long. All right. And so we felt very disinterested, very disconnected from the history of this country, because we've not been reflected in the institutional responses, in the institutions that we value, all right, as society, all right, here in Canada. And we've been trying to make our place. When the Honourable Jean Augustine stood up in Parliament to suggest that we should have a Black History Month, she herself at first thought, you know, that this is mainly an American thing, all right? But she grew to understand that it was important to be able to recognize those contributions of Black Canadians to our society. So in 1995, she stood up in the House and insisted that we create a Black History Month. And in 1996, it came to fruition, and we now have across Canada recognition, an official recognition of Black History Month. So those are the kinds of contributions that we think are significant. Am I getting that buzz because our time is up, or? No? Okay. You know, because we know and we think those things are significant. It certainly have been to us, and important for us as we move, you know, forward through, our presence here in Canada. And we want newcomers to know and understand that, you know, there is recognition of the part that others have played within the development of Canada. It's important for the BIPOC community, that's the Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, all right, that they can see that there is a way, all right, for them to be able to participate, for them to be able to accomplish, and for them to be able to contribute, all right, to, you know, our society. It's not only, you know, through history that we see that, you know, we need to see it every day, reflected in our, you know, communications. We need to see that, you know, on our television stations and our newspapers. There needs to be a recognition of the roles that we have played and that we can play. I am a member of I'm actually become the regional director for Quebec of the Canadian Association of Black Journalists. And pretty soon, in a couple of months, we're going to have a recognition of Quebec's first Black newspaper. And we're going to award Black journalists for their outstanding contributions. The name of the first Black newspaper was back in the late 20s, early 30s, the Freelance. And we are going to create a Freelance Award to recognize those individuals' contributions. And it's starting to be something that we can see every day. And so we don't have to only rely on the stories of Harriet Tubman and, you know, and her, you know, bringing slaves across, you know, to the Canadian border. We don't only have to see people struggling in the sense of maybe, you know, Viola Desmond, right, who was denied a place in a movie theater because there was a section for whites and a section for blacks. We don't have to suffer the indignities of being refused service like Fred Christie was in the York Tavern that used to be attached to the Montreal Forum, where the owner refused to serve him because he was Black. Our stories don't have to only be of rejection or slavery or struggle all the time. You know, we need to be able to recognize the people who have accomplished things despite their barriers, all right, and look at them as great Canadian achievements. And that's what we intend to do with the EBCs of Canadian Black History, and focus on people, and in future will be on people like Dr. Williams herself, whose contributions have been immeasurable in terms of, you know, creating a narrative which has forced its way to be included in the Canadian narrative, because we begin to understand how much unrecognized contributions there are. We are presently working with with Rogers Sports and Media, where we have created a campaign called Think You Know Canada Story? Well, think again. We're talking about the untold story of Canada. And so whether it's about the fur trade and the Bunga brothers, who were 4 brothers, Black brothers, who were educated in Montreal. They spoke French, English, and Ojibwe. Their parents were an escaped Haitian slave. This was their father, and their mother was an Ojibwe woman. And they were often used as people who to map out new territory because they knew the territory, and the people who fetched runaway, criminals from time to time because they knew the territory so much better. But unfortunately, George Bondner, the one who's featured in our kit, is recognized more in Minnesota than he is in Canada, because at the time where Nouvelle-France was finishing, that sort of this extreme border before it got to Manitoba, as a matter of fact, which the territory was cut off and went all the way down to Louisiana. And Thomas Jefferson bought, through the Louisiana Purchase, that great part of Nouvelle-France from Napoleon. And George Bondner had established an inn there and so on, and he's recognized and celebrated even to this day as the first citizen of Minnesota, because eventually that territory became Minnesota. So and fortunately, his legacy is one of accomplishment, not one of slavery, not one of rejection, not one of struggle, but of somebody who contributed to the development of what we understand to be, the society today. So we're looking to do that with the ABCs of Canadian Black history, to be able to provide a foundation for which people can build on, to be able to say, we were here, we have done something. And that not only that our only legacy is not one of slavery. I remember growing up and, in the classroom with kids, and people were saying, well, hey, the Italians did this, and the Romans, the Greeks did democracy. These people did this and that. What did you guys do? Well, the only thing we had any knowledge of, or anybody had any recognition of, was slavery. And that's not a legacy to build on, right? That's not a foundation that anybody could be proud of. The fact that we've survived it, yes, and that we've continued to, to contribute, yes, that's, but we don't only want to be recognized because of that, because of the barriers. And teaching all Canadians about Black history allows them to identify all of us as Canadians, all right, and have a more positive outlook, and will prevent further incursions, hopefully, like Marlene was talking about the racial slurs and so on, because we will be used to knowing and understanding and identifying Black Canadians as Canadians, and not just some outside group, some Johnny-come-lately who only came here during the the immigration, after the immigration laws were changed in the 70s and 80s, when the significant wave of of the Black community started to come from all over, particularly from the Caribbean, and then in the 2000s from Africa. All of these changes in our our population were also due to the British influence. The British eliminated slavery in 1833, but Blacks had been here even before that, when they came with the United Empire Loyalists. There are 3,000 Black families that came to Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, on the promise of freedom by the British just after the American Revolutionary War, because they'd fought on the side of the British and were promised freedom, and they established themselves. And so we recognize, Nova Scotia in particular, and New Brunswick, but as the seat of the Black community in Canada, even though it's probably the 4th largest group in the country after Toronto, Montreal, and now the Ottawa-Gatineau area, which is the third largest Black population in Canada. But I think Nova Scotia is kind of just on its heels. But it's we are the fastest growing Black community, and actually the fastest growing population in the country, bar none, are the African community out west, who've grown 104% over the last 10 years. So we are seeing changes, and we're going to see more changes. And with those changes will come the responsibility to reflect in our education milieu, and our, our communications, our entertainment, our government, those changes in the population, in order to be able to make sure that everyone is properly represented and everybody's concerns are heard. And hopefully educational interventions like ours will be at the forefront of helping change those change attitudes and create more awareness. And we're hoping that other communities will be able to follow, use our path as a way of being able to enlighten the rest of Canada as to the contributions of their community as well, and make it so that the new arrivals can see that perhaps there's a way for them to establish themselves here and be recognized for their efforts. So that's me, and that's sort of it, the part of my presentation. If there are any questions, I'd certainly would love to entertain them. Yes, Carol.
Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, I grew up in Nova Scotia, and I really wasn't that aware when I was a teenager about Preston and Africville.
Mm-hmm.
But I was aware of the Order of Good Cheer, and it's one of the few things that I actually remember from my history course.
Mm-hmm.
So I find it fascinating that this Matthew Decosta was a member of the Order of Good Cheer.
Yeah.
Even back then.
Even back then, 1604 to 1608, somewhere around there. He was one of the founding members of the Order of Good Cheer.
I think that's really, really significant.
I think so too. And people need to know that. We celebrate that as a part of our history. We should know that, we were, that other communities were a part of it. And probably others that we haven't been told about, probably Indigenous community members were a part of that as well, because in many ways, the new arrivals would not have survived, if not had been for the role that the Indigenous communities played in terms of their support, their support for everything from A to Z in terms of acclimatizing themselves to these communities, acclimatizing themselves to this new land.
I know that Harriet Tubman in her Underground Railroad brought a lot of Blacks up to Canada, specifically more in Ontario, I think, and in Nova Scotia, right?
Well, in Ontario for sure. And actually, it should be noted, she lived in St. Catharines, Ontario for 15 years. And that community supported her, not only in terms, but not only in terms of, financial, but they found jobs for these escaped slaves. They found homes for them. They educated their children.
Yeah.
And if one thing was distinctive and desired on the part of slaves was to learn to read, because they were denied, they were not allowed to read because slave owners were afraid that they would get together and revolt. And so the only time you might have been able to read is if you were going to read the Bible. If they were going to teach you about the Bible, they were willing to teach you about your religion, but but being literate in other ways was not going to be possible. So it was extremely well appreciated that St. Catharines, Ontario, accepted it. And it's good to know that there is an elementary school in St. Catharines called Harriet Tubman.
Yeah, it's named for her. Yeah.
Yeah, named after her. And surprisingly, I guess 2 years ago, we were up in Quebec City for one of the KESBA conferences. And we set up our booth next to these guys who were from St. Catharines, Ontario. And we set up and a page fell open to Harriet Tubman. And he said, "Oh, I know all about Harriet Tubman." He looked at him, you know all of it. And he said, every school child he said, when we were growing up, we all knew about Harriet Tubman, and we all celebrated her. So, so I see I have to end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Kevin was asking to, they've
They asked for
requested
10 more minutes, so
Okay.
I'm gonna
Okay.
give them 10 more minutes.
All
Do
right, all right.
do we
Good,
want to
good, good.
join in? Do we want to join in all together?
Yeah,
Or
I
do you
think it
want to
would be
stay?
great for us to join in. To see
Yeah,
what,
I think so.
Okay, is that, are you able to do that, Kevin? Just join us
Sure,
together?
yeah, I
Okay,
will bring you
thanks.
guys all
Okay.
in.
All right, you take, thanks a lot, Kevin.
Oh,
The recording is still on.
Kevin, I think Scotty beamed Rosemary out of this configuration.
They'll be pulled back into the room in about 10 seconds. The room's going to close automatically.
Thank you so much.
I think we're all back.
Oh, there we go. There's Rosemary.
Everyone is back now.
Okay, so maybe Linton can finish answering the question.
Charlene, yeah,
You're muted.
you're muted, and Linton, sorry.
Okay. All right. So now we're
Go ahead.
back.
Yeah.
Yes. Charlene Sullivan from Neighbors asked if their association can anybody buy the kit? And yes, they can. During this present campaign of during Black History Month, we've been encouraging people to buy the kit to be able to give to their schools, to be able to give to their library. So all you have to do is go to our website at blackbiblio.com, and Black Biblio is BLACBIBLIO. There's no K. And you'll find the way that you can do it. You can order it right there online. And at the present time during Black History Month, there's a $50 off the price of the kit. And of course, if you buy multiple kits, there's even a possibility for 10 or more kits to be even a further discount. As well, we want to be able to mention that when you do buy the kit for your school, you also give them access to an online game, which can be played over and over again, which is a kind of a memory game, right? Where you have a board with lots of numbers on it, and you have to, you choose number 1 and number 11. If they match, the history lesson comes up. If they don't, they turn back over, and you have to find the ones that match each other. And at the end, there's even a large puzzle or a saying or or a historical lesson from somebody from the Black Canadian history that can also be a learning tool. But it changes every time. So every time somebody plays it, there are different numbers and different there are different characters around different numbers and different characters as well. Because I think we only have what is it, 18? I can't remember exactly on the screen at a time. So you're likely to see new characters, and certainly there's a scramble that's made so that the games are always refreshed. And so, and we've been finding that there have been people who have now been buying these kits for their schools, as alumni or, your old high school or elementary school, you want to give it to the library, or your community public library, or community organizations that, may have, after school programs, and they're looking for material, to be able to use. And there are so many ways, because we have these cards that Dorothy showed you in her presentation, which I didn't show in mine, but there are 2 sets of cards that that can be used, to play games with, that that come in the guide and so on. And so if I remember, if anybody remembers having baseball cards or hockey cards or anything like that, you know, there's lots of stuff that you learn from them as you go through them. As my mother used to say, she wishes I knew my schoolwork as well as I knew my these cards. But we also have two different sets, and one set comes with the set. There's two of them in there, and this is one type. And then the next type is what we call the collector's cards. And here I have the French version. But, you know, on the back of the collector's cards is a more facts, kind of like a fact sheet about where these people were born, where they died, what they did, etc. Much more of that than the relating of the stories. But in the kit itself, this is the one with the stories. It has a little poem on the front, as Dorothy noted before, and the full story as to why we recognize these people as being you know, of historical significance. So yes, anybody can gain access to them. These cards, the collector's cards, can be bought separately, much cheaper than the, you know, than the set. Excuse me, much cheaper than the set, and but as well, you know, many hours of enjoyment of being able to play with these cards and learn from. I don't know if there's something else you wanted
Just
to
to
add.
just to let everyone know that Karen has put in the chat the site that you can go on to look it up. And I have Maria with a question.
This is maybe a little Miss Shaw. Two questions, actually. I'm so pleased, Linton, that you revealed that. Is the kit available in the French language?
Yes, it is. It is fully available in the French language, and even the game will be available very shortly online in French as well.
Okay, well, given what we are going through here in Quebec with Bill 21 and Bill 96, and they certainly don't seem to be open to the diversity that we are. I'm just wondering how many of these kits have been given to school boards, both English and or French, or is that too soon to? I don't want to put you on the spot.
But ironically, we've sold more in Ontario than we have in Quebec, as a matter of fact. But we're making gains. We are working more closely with some of the school boards. We've had one school board say that they didn't think they didn't like the kit, and so they didn't buy any. Here in Quebec, we had one, but our experience in Ontario has been absolutely wonderful, and they have been leading the country in their purchase of them. But we've also sold in Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, out in Winnipeg, and Calgary. We've sold across the country. So we're step by step, getting it to be known, and hopefully more and more schools and school boards will see the utility of the kit and want to have it themselves.
Yeah, I just hope that.
Well, Linton, if I could just mention that in December and in January, the Committee for the Enhancement of the Curriculum of the History of Quebec met with Mr. Christopher Skeet, who is the parliamentary assistant to the Premier, who is the minister responsible for relations with the English-speaking community. And we had a promise that the French kits would be presented to the fonctionnaires for the 60 school service centers, and we're still waiting for the orders from the 60 French school service centers. So that was very disappointing. And also, I just want to mention and thank Marlene Jennings, Dorothy Williams, and Linton Garner. This project, we met 6 months ago. The COMEC committee sponsored a panel discussion with Marlene, Dorothy, and Linton at the Community Vitality Forum at Concordia University the first week of November. And we had to resubmit a virtual plan because the original grant application was to have the first session at Pierrefonds Community High School in the West Island, and the second one at Pierre Elliott Trudeau Elementary School in Hull-Gatineau, so that we had to get the virtual plan approved. So I really wish to thank Marlene, who sort of had to leave us, Dorothy and Linton for being with us through the last 6 months, and we're very grateful for their commitment, and thank you so much.
Thank you, and a special thanks to Brian. I don't think that we've had a more dogged ally anywhere than Brian, who has bugged ministers and their functionaries, and talk to anybody who's listened at the local coffee shop, at the McDonald's, doesn't matter where. He's been championing the cause of the ABC of Canadian Black history. And we cannot thank you enough, Brian, for having set this whole thing up for us and for being our champion. And the way that you've been, it's been, really, it's. I'm at a loss for words, to tell you the truth, about how much we appreciate it. And full disclosure, Brian and I went to high school together, and I was nice to him. I wasn't a bully, so I could not believe that from all those years ago, which is more than 50 now, that we would still be allies like this, and that he would be championing our cause. So thank you, Brian. It's just been unbelievable, the groundwork that you've done for us. It's most appreciated.
And I just wish that when I taught the history of Quebec and Canada course 2 decades ago, I had the ABCs of Canadian Black History kit, because it was really time. And with the present government, it still exists in the classes of secondary 3 and secondary 4, and it's something that needs to be addressed.
Thanks. Okay, Maria, you had another question?
No, I just am concerned about making sure that Francophones, Christopher Skeed, who I also met with over another matter, doesn't like the term multicultural at all. And I am concerned about reaching out to the Francophone educators, even their teachers' unions, professional days. I think there's a lot of ways. I know Linton and Dorothy, I mean, your energies are limited because you're so involved in continuing to promote the ABC kit. But I think it is well worth considering to have professional development days for teachers where you can present the kit, and also to the teachers' unions, aside from school board, but mainly the Francophone. So it's not really a question. It's just my concern that they seem to be alienated or refuse to, or in denial. That's the real truth. With made up fears about any kind of diversity, and particularly Black Anglophones, more than even French Anglophones. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. And I wanted to thank everybody. Believe it or not, I've got another Zoom to go to. So I gotta leave. I know. We're starting from Zoom.
My goodness.
Is it one of those Council of Women's meeting, or?
Yeah, it's to organize something because I also sit on the provincial council, Rosemary. And so I'm involved with the Francophone Quebec phenomena that I didn't want to get involved in. I don't mind Montreal, and I don't mind the National Council, but the Quebec Council is always very tricky waters. Let me put it that way. It's sad, but true. And we have elections in April, provincially, don't we? I want to thank everybody, Brian, Carol, all of you. Really, this has wonderful. And the work that you do, please do continue. And listen, you have my email, you have my coordinates. Let me know with what you're about and what you're doing, because we can promote your activities. We can promote your activities through the council, through both councils, actually. You see, so something that I'm eager to do about recognizing that we are a coalition of like-minded people who love each other and respect each other, and we need to maintain that relationship. So thank you all, and I must leave. I've got to go. I'm
No
sorry.
problem.
Bye
Good
bye.
luck with your meeting, and thank you again for all your support. Thank you.
Thank
Right.
you, Rosemary.
you,
Bye
Marie.
bye. Bye, Dorothy. Bye, Lincoln.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Maria.
We won't get any stories from Brian about what took place in your youth. I can just imagine. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
Were there any other questions? I'm just getting a whole bunch of thank yous on chat, and Matthew Farfan is calling you an icon, Dorothy.
Icon. Okay.
We'll take that. She'll take that. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna put that on the website.
Yeah, Rosemary, I just want to mention that the Federal Anti-Racism Secretariat of Canadian Heritage is sponsoring the official Black History Month virtual celebration 2022, and it's on next Thursday, February the 17th, from 7 to 8 p.m. And it's hosted by the Honourable Ahmed Hussein, the Minister of Housing and Diversity and Inclusion. And the official theme is February and Forever, celebrating Black history today and every day. And the special guests include the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, the Honourable Marcy Ian, the Minister for Women, Gender Equality and Youth, and of course the Honourable Ahmed Hussein, who's the Minister of Housing and Diversity and Inclusion. Now, the way this event is open, and what you should do is consult the office of your MP and ask for an invitation and the Zoom link for this special evening, Thursday, February 17th.
That's great. So I'm also sorry I must leave because I have a 8:30 Zoom as well.
Okay.
with the folks from Ottawa and the Black History Month committee there.
Okay.
But I do want to, before I go, I do want to thank the Quebec Federation of Home and School Associations for having been the host. And full disclosure, I'm the past president, but I have not interfered in this process. And Brian has again been the champion there to make this happen. But I do want to thank our president, Rosemary Murphy. I do want to thank Carol Mindel, our Director General. I'd also like to thank other board members, Natasha Drysdale, as well as
Debbie.
Debbie Brown, as well as Jeanette Sauvé-Franco for having participated and supported this initiative, and our staff, Marlon Browning, Mimi, and I always want to say Tabachnik, but it's not Tabachnik. You know, and Mimi from the office. Their support has been just fantastic, and you know, with the back and forth and taking care of all the, you know, the communications and whatnot, and really just taking it upon themselves because they thought it was important. And I am proud to be a part of an organization that believes that and believes in making sure that we all participate fully in our society, and that we teach the young people that all of our associations try to do in their individual schools, that there is a lot more to life than what we learn, you know, in our books. And they're really examples for how we should conduct ourselves in our society and hats off to their presidents like Jennifer Carbonell, who's here from Pete's out here in which is Pierre Trudeau Elementary School out here in Hull, and all the other presidents who have been a part of this over those 2 days. So thank the Quebec Federation of Home and Schools, Learn Quebec as well for having set up the platform, the work of Kevin Licorice to make sure that this Zoom was taking place after his hours of work, I'm sure. I know, and anybody, the other staff who are part of Learn, and of course, Multiculturalism Canada, who have made this possible, and the support from David Birnbaum and Greg Ferguson, even the past MNA, Jeff Kelly, and all those who have helped make this possible. So thank you all very much, and thanks for all you old friends who showed up to hear about this. And I look forward to maybe seeing you in your schools, to talk a little bit more about the ABCs of Canadian Black history. So thank you.
When they're finally opened again to all of us.
Yeah, hopefully.
Linton, I'd like to add the name of Dr. Michael Canuel, the Chief Executive Officer of Learn, who was on side from the first day and said, yes, we can do this when we were doing face-to-face meetings throughout the 46 community learning centers. And when we suddenly had to go to virtual, and Rob Costain helped us out, and Kevin Licorice, we just were blessed with the support of Learn Quebec and the CLC initiative. And I'm going to reiterate, because it's always important to mention that it would not be possible without the events grant from community support, multiculturalism, and anti-racism initiatives of the Department of Canadian Heritage of the Government of Canada. We have to thank them, and without their support, this would not have been possible.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night, all.
Good night, Linton. Thank you again. And Michael Canuel called me today and wished us well for tonight. So Rob and oh, he's not there anymore. Oh, there you are. Rob and Kevin. Yeah, your boss said you did a good job. Okay, so are there any other questions, or we shall close it up for tonight? Dorothy, are you fine? Was there any last thing you wish to say? Or
Well, so many thank yous and goodbyes have been made already. I don't want to hold everybody up with that, but just to say, and I'm going to include everybody, and this has just been great. It's really, really been wonderful. Anytime I get an opportunity to share my passion, I'm excited. And had a little bit of a glitch, but everybody was a real trooper. It wasn't just me. I appreciate that they were quite content to look at me for 10 slides before we realized there should have been something else. So that says something. So
well, again, many thank yous on chat. Everyone is saying great job. And I've seen you both nights, last Tuesday and tonight, and I've learned something both nights. So there you go.
Oh, there you
Perfect.
go. Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm
If there are
glad.
no other questions, I'm going to say thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight, and have a good evening. Take care and be safe. Okay. Good night.
Thank you.